let's set the tone. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna look Beth in the eye as it. No, I'm just kidding.
Can we get a Kleenex sponsorship for him?
Listen, that's not that bad.
No.
I don't have hand sanitizer, but if
There's some over there.
Okay, yes.
You want some?
Yes, I hate now, like, when people don't, after they blow their nose, I'm like, you're a fucking psychopath. Like, do you not know what we've been through the past few years?
I remember one of my favorite tweets of the entire pandemic, the entire one that I can remember, was somebody saying, I can't believe I was raw dogging it on public transportation my entire life.
It's so true.
Yeah, it's
true.
so true.
And now all I
Oh
can
my
think of when
God.
someone coughs is like those
Particulate
infographics,
droplets?
with like the image of the particles.
Or like the whooshing of the like subway air. Like as I was like, oh, I'm just got like fucking pink eye, like getting here. But it's worth it.
Yeah.
I'm with you,
come
Pen.
here.
Yes, Pen.
Yes.
You're
So-
fucking up my eyes. It's okay.
This is a hard-hitting question.
Yes.
From our research shows,
yeah.
you're talking about having hay fever since you were a child. Is that right?
That's legit. Like when I was a kid, it was like I would be in bed for a
Really?
few days.
Wow.
Yeah. And so last week I did think I had pink eye because my eyes got so red and they were so itchy. And so I texted a friend. I was like, I think I have pink eye. And she was like, that's not good. The next day I was like, just kidding. It's my allergies. And she's like, okay. Thanks for the play-by-play. But it's, I always have bad allergies.
How did that affect you as a kid? Was it like, is it a prominent thing for you?
Well, I mean, I think as someone who likes to be home and watching TV, I think it was just nice to have an excuse to watch TV. So it's good. Like I remember having it like freshman year of college, and I was just like, I get to stay in and like watch Sex in the City and The West Wing. Like I truly was like, I'm like not a cool person. But I always just use it as an excuse to watch TV, so to help me get through it.
So it was great then.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It's like I can't breathe, my eyes or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, can you define hay fever for us? Because I feel like I've heard people refer to that as like almost, it's just, like I think
We thought it was
in
Wanderlust.
London, in no, I think in London they call allergies hay fever. Like it's not, it's not, it
It's
ranges,
allergies.
Yeah, it just kind
Yeah.
of ranges anywhere from something that's insignificant to whatever. But this is something where
It was like more significant. It's like, you're just like, you're constantly like runny nose. You can't really breathe. Like I remember last year when I was shooting my show that got canceled, Everything's Trash. And we were inside all day and then we went outside and in 10 minutes, I could not breathe. Like it was fucking horrible. So that's usually the thing. It's like if I can't breathe and my eyes are watering, I just feel like not a person. So that's like really bad for me.
last spring when we were shooting season 4 of My Show You. I always have to say My Show You, just to be clear.
Which isn't canceled.
No, it's not canceled. It's doing very well.
In his bag. He is
Yeah.
he is expensive, honey.
Yeah, as of season 5, this podcast can no longer afford me.
We never would.
No, but see, the spring there was like nothing I'd ever seen in my life. There was so much pollen in the air. And I don't know if London has this usually. I mean, they definitely were saying it was unusual, but it was everywhere. My eyes, I would walk outside and my eyes felt milky.
Yeah.
I could feel it in my throat. And this is a nice way to start off the interview, because what I would say
Sexiest
was, well, what I was,
intro
it is a little bit sexy, because what I started saying spontaneous, I was like, never in my life have I felt like I'm walking outside to tree ejaculate, but that's what's happening now.
It's true. You're
'cause
getting
that's what pollen
jizzed in.
is.
It's just
Yeah.
nonstop jizz. Just,
I just want to say that tree ejaculate is not sexy. So
That's
you
not
didn't
fair.
take
it's
it there.
sexy when
That's
Penn
fair.
says it. Let me have this. Let me have this.
No, so I went to high school in Beijing, and apparently, so like in Beijing in the springtime, there's just like the ground is covered in white, like fluffy pollen, because apparently there's like a government thing. They bought a ton of trees, planted a ton of trees, and they were all male trees. So there's no
Wait. There are male and female trees?
Yeah.
It caused an issue where there's just like a
A
ton
lot of male
pollen.
violence, a lot of tree violence.
A lot of
Very
toxicity.
chauvinistic.
Yeah.
Lot
Well,
of-
it goes to show you need the balance.
Yeah,
The balance of the feminine and the masculine.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
No. That's not worth cutting. It's staying. Okay. So
That's
so,
merch. Honestly, tree ejaculate is merch.
I really
If
like
we
that.
send you some, will you wear it?
Yes, 100%.
Do you identify mostly as a writer? Because that's what
I was
you seem like
nervous
to
about
me.
where this was
I
going.
Do you,
know,
do you
but
identify
like-
as a tree? No. Like seriously, are you? That's what you feel like to me. Because I mean, that's kind of
A multi-hyphenate.
You're so many things.
You're such a dream, Pen. This is a lot. I'm just telling you guys, listeners, I just want you. Here's the thing. Like, you think you know
You have no idea.
when you see on TV, and then when you're in the room, it's like, holy fuck. Just want to say, I'm trying to be profesh, but it's
Sure. drink your non-sponsored water.
my non-sponsored Celsius. Hi,
That's what we'll
sparkling
cut.
orange.
Redacted. It's just gonna
Yeah.
be
The blurry, censored image.
But seriously, to answer your question, I feel like I am a writer first. Like, it's like
Yeah.
what I used to write short stories all the time as a kid. Sorry, I went off the mic to look at you.
Sorry.
all good.
But I used to write stories all the time as a kid. I was a voracious reader. And so everything else that came after, like stand up and having the imprint and podcasting and acting, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something, whatever, all that came later. So I think, I think yes, because whenever someone asks for like my little, like, what do you want to say? I always put like writer first. It's
Yeah.
like writer, comedian, actress. So
Okay.
I think, yeah, I do view myself that way.
So what kind of writer were you at 12, 13, 14?
Well, I remember, and this is pre-middle school, but I had the biggest crush on my gym teacher,
Aww.
Mr. Knapp with 2 P's.
KNAPP?
Yeah, yeah. And he used to always wear these like little like Dockers like slacks. Like he just felt like such a like grown up to me. And so
You're like, that's what I want. That's what I need.
yeah, I was like, oh, let me get this gym teacher, honey. But I wrote a story. I think I won an award, like an award in school for it. But I wrote a story. I was a princess, and I think my brother got kidnapped, and I went to go save him. And then I ended up getting kidnapped. And so my gym teacher saved both of us. And then, like,
So precious.
it's so sweet. And then me and my
precious.
gym teacher, like, ended up happily ever after, which, like,
You won an award for that?
which I'm like, God.
Well, she wasn't sure. She may not have.
They might have been like, no award. But I do remember, like, people being like, oh, this is such a fun story. And I'm like, this is, looking back, I'm like, this is kind of crazy. Guys, Cleveland, Ohio. What were you doing? It was a different time.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, it was the 90s. Anything went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
But yeah, I used to just love like writing stories, and just I think I live in my head a lot even now as an adult. Like I'm always just, just stories, and just dialogue is always just floating through my head. I am very voice driven, whether it's stand up, writing, whatever. So I always try to sound the most like myself. So like everything, like my sentences are thick, like THICC. Like there's a lot happening, a lot of pop culture references, a lot of horniness, but also like kind of smart. Like I sneak in like a little bit of,
Of course.
yeah. But writing is just so fun. Like it's just one of those things where it's like I just enjoy the process so much. Like I'll just be writing and like making myself laugh, or being like, oh, this is interesting, or like I just love language. I love words. I just love communication in that way. So it's like my favorite.
I love that, Phoebe, because I feel like a lot of writers, I sometimes write, and I can be on either side of it, are miserable writing. Like it's like this like a miserable experience, but then what comes out makes it worth it. It's like it's lonely, or it's like I couldn't find the word, or so it's nice to hear someone who like, you have so much fun writing it. I actually don't know if I've ever heard anyone say that.
Well, I mean, I have fun, but then there are also days where I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. Like every book I've
I
written.
mean, everything is trash.
Yeah.
Right?
but
I
like
had so much fun writing everything is trash. Weirdly.
But it's like there's always that balance of there are days where I love it, and then days where I'm like, if I could just disappear myself and not have to pay back this advance, I would fucking dip out on this book. So it's just, it's like this little like dance. Like, I think people always think that writing is like Carrie Bradshaw. You're just like, I can't help but wonder. You're wearing like stiletto. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's not what's happening. You know what I mean? It's a much more, it's a much more difficult task.
Yeah.
When you were in middle school, did you keep a journal?
Here's the thing. I've always tried to keep journals, but I'm just always like, I lived it. And so I would just get bored with myself, just write the recap of the day. That I'm just like, no. And even as an adult, I always like try. Like I always start after like something really cool happens, and then I never stick with it because it's like that day was like a really cool day. So the next day is just like, oh, I did this audition and I didn't book it. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't want to keep a record of all the rejections. But yeah, I don't know.
I feel like you just spoke for me. I feel that way. Like I always want to keep a journal. I've tried so many times. Nava suggested I do a 1 line a day journal. I bought one. I started it. I was like, this is a new me. No, I can't. And I think that's it.
Well,
Here's
sorry. What she was saying though, 1 line. I mean.
I know. I cannot keep up simple routines.
In her defense,
you won't.
I bought a 1 line journal, have not filled it out.
Yeah.
Those things are bullshit. But what I did do is I got
our sponsors.
Yeah. Oh wait, they're so good.
No.
They're so good.
Yeah, of course.
Celsius, so good. I'm just kidding. Okay. You're gonna have to bleep this so much, but no. What I did start doing was a gratitude jar.
Oh,
a gratitude jar.
Yeah.
You put it in the jar.
Yeah, so it's a jar that says, I got it from 1-800-Flowers.
Oh, not a plug I was expecting.
but one will take.
Shout out. And it's like a little glass jar with the word gratitude on it. And they have like these little like tiny like note cards. And each day I just write like, oh, I'm grateful for therapy, or I'm grateful for this, or it was my friend's 40th birthday and I got to go to like her dinner. And
that's nice.
And that's like easier because you can see the jar and you see it getting full. Where I'm just like, it's a fucking notebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Notebooks just sit around.
Yeah.
Do you go back into the jar, or is it just a matter of knowing that you've done it and you see it fill up?
You can go back. I try and go back in at the end of the year.
That's a lot of...
I know, but then you pull it out, you're
and
like...
you remember all of it.
So sweet.
Yeah, and then
cool.
sometimes like I'll forget to do it for a week. So then like today, like before this, I sat down and did like last week, and I was like, oh, last week was fucking great.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot that because you're just stressed about work and blah, 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 da-da-da. And you're like, no, last week was good. So I was trying to do it. I'm recently single. I was trying to do it with my ex-boyfriend. He always thought it was such a waste of time. And so I didn't do it. And then now being single and doing it myself, it's like
The first
the
year,
best.
I'm so grateful.
It's
to be
over.
single.
that he's letting me be grateful again.
It's interesting. We just spoke to someone who was sort of like offering, or we asked him to offer some life wisdom, and I asked him like, what's the key to a happy life or a good life? And he said gratitude. So it's really nice. That's a really lovely practice to sort of center your mind on that.
It's true. And I don't think I would have felt that when I was younger. I'm now 38.
We're the same age.
Hollywood is gonna kick me out. No,
You have 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years left.
And I gotta fucking call it. Yeah. I think the older you get, the more like triumphs you have, the more failures that you have, the more just sort of kind of like general, like this day was fine, you know?
Yeah.
So you just sort of go, you just have to be grateful for it all, because there is no high that's going to last forever, or no low that's going to last forever. And it's just, can you tell I go to therapy, and I also have an astrologist who's also my life coach. Can you guys tell?
I was picking up on something.
No, so I
Okay,
have
okay.
Dr. Monica Johnson. She's a badass bitch. And then Whitney Howard is my life coach / astrologist. And I've been seeing both of them since like middle of COVID, like mid 2020, maybe end of 2020. And it's been so great shifting my perspective, because I'm very much type A. I do not like change. I'm very much like, but if I just do all the right things, then this should be the outcome. It's really hard for me. And I always deal with disappointment where I'm just like, but I don't understand. I did everything right. And there's just like, there is no right a lot of the times. It just is.
Is that type? What is type A? And is there a type B?
There's I think there's multiple types. Type A is very much like,
I just think of like this motion.
It's a lot of.
Just-
it's a lot
It's
of.
in air traffic.
It's a lot of. It's a lot of your sort of like obsessed with order. So like for me, this actually makes me feel better that it's on evenly on as opposed like this is like would drive me crazy. And like you just like everything order and like it's a lot of like wanting to have control because you know that there is really no control. So you just sort of zero in on things that you can really control.
It's often associated with like CEOs, executives,
Yeah.
like everything in order, everything
Yeah.
along a routine, a schedule.
I am a creature of habit.
Yeah.
Like every place I have just like one thing I get from that place and like that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
On that note of gratitude, you reminded me of something that happened in therapy where I was talking to my therapist. I was talking about my husband, David, who is a producer on the podcast. He's not here right now, but he usually is. And I was saying, like, I just get so frustrated. He's not picking up his laundry. I was like naming things that were frustrating me. And she's like, okay, I have like a tool for you. She's like, next time that happens, just like take a minute, pause, and think of some things you're grateful for that he does do. And she was like, let's try it right now. And I was like, okay. I took a moment and I was like, well, he does make breakfast every single morning. And she was like, there you go. And before that, I was like, I just had totally blocked that out. I just took it for granted. It's so easy as human beings to just like, if we're left to our own devices, to only think of the negative.
Yeah, but
there's
he
so
could
much
pick
positive.
up his clothes.
He could.
Yeah.
He could. I
But
think
he's
he could
making
like,
let's
breakfast
not let
every
him
day.
off the hook.
Listen,
You expect the man to make breakfast every day and
Yes.
then pick things up
100
afterward?
Yes. Pen, yes.
I'm
Maybe that's why.
incredulous.
Maybe that's why I'm single, Pim, because I just.
I was imagining your therapist being like, what you do, Sophie, is you pause
just let it go.
and then she just slowly got up and left the room.
She's
That's
like,
it.
I'm leaving.
Okay,
this
wait, just one
relationship.
more thing on gratitude.
Yes.
I just heard this on a podcast about neuroplasticity, and someone was asking, like, is positive thinking real? Like, does positive thinking attract better results based in science? And the person was saying, like, actually, there's some validity to it because basically where the mind goes, the energy flows.
Yeah.
So what you think about is where you direct your energy. So if you think about positive things, like, you're going to direct more energy towards them. And I was thinking, I really want to get that tattooed because I can be like a very apocalyptic thinker, like crisis. So I really want to tattoo like where the mind goes, the energy
First
flows.
tattoo?
You're actually thinking of it?
I'm really thinking about
I
it.
Whoa.
kind of
I'm
love
thinking
that.
about that.
I love
Yeah.
that for you. You should do it.
I think I'm going to do it.
I think it's
love
gonna
that
be
phrase.
really
I
come
love
with
that
For
me.
some reason, that phrase, I love that for you. Like recently, I used it for the first
It's so
time. I said,
nuanced.
I text on the podcast thread. I just text, love that for him. and it's just, why is that funny?
It's like nuance because it's like I do love that, but for you.
Yeah, but I don't. I really like. I want
Yes.
a tattoo. I'm too scared, so I
Let's
haven't.
go
gotten
together.
one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Make a date.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Yeah,
gosh,
I would
that
do
would be
it.
so cute.
Yeah, just so you know, my wife is on the other end. She has so many. She's now thinking about getting some removed.
Really?
So you know, maybe once you start,
Whoa.
She has such a beautiful tattoo.
she does.
Yeah.
She actually wants to get a very small one removed to see
Oh.
how that goes, and then.
Wait, why does she want them removed?
Yeah.
She's just like over them.
You know, I don't want to speak for her. I think
Too late.
Let's call her in.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I think it is kind of like. I mean, look, I have one tattoo. If it's anything like mine, after a while, I actually think no matter how much they meant, they don't mean that anymore. It's just like, you know, I did that when I thought it meant something, and it did for some time, and it looked cool as well, and maybe now it's just, I don't know.
Wow.
Maybe it's our toddler who is, I think he started noticing them, and he'll be like, what that? You know, I'll be like, what is that? He also started drawing on himself a lot, like on his hands, and she has tattoos all over her hands. And I think it bothered, I didn't really mind, but I think, don't want to speak for her. Hey, baby, hi, Dom. I think it bothered her, and then I think when she looked at his hands and then looked at her, she was like, well, I can't really tell him no there, can I?
Yeah.
I got my first and only tattoo at 24, like a full adult.
Me too. That's, the same age.
And I was so terrified to tell my mom. I knew she was going to be livid. I was 24. But eventually I told her on the phone, and there was just a long pause. And then she said, I can't help but think this is symptomatic of something deeper.
I love that.
That is amazing.
When I was 18, I was like thinking of getting a tattoo, and I told my mom. My mom was like, to me, she seemed very conservative at the time. I was like, Mom, I'm thinking of getting a tattoo. What do you think? And she was like, yeah. What about a nose piercing? She's trying to redirect him.
That's so cute.
It's really cute. Yeah.
Did you ever get a nose piercing? No.
No.
Yeah.
Don't want to draw attention to it.
Yeah.
Just keep moving. Phoebe,
Y'all.
who were you like really close with at 12 or 13? Who were you hanging out with? Who were you getting inspiration from?
Oh gosh, I had this best friend. Her name was Chloe. And so I don't know if this term is still allowed, but I was kind of a tomboy. Is that, can you say that still?
Yeah,
I
it's fine.
think
I think
so.
so.
Okay, great.
We'll find out. Sophie
s-
doesn't look thrilled with it.
I don't know. But yes.
Yeah, I feel I
Yeah.
don't know where we are in the
I don't
culture
know.
on
Yeah.
that word.
Yeah.
And the culture.
We should
I'm
put
gonna
that up
start
for.
that.
We should refer that to the
Yeah.
tribunal or something.
Yeah. But I used to like playing like pickup basketball with my older brother and his friends, really into sports, really into I was like also like watching stuff like I was watching like Melrose Place where you're like, why are you watching that at 12?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it's true.
oh yeah. I remember
Like-
when people would- like 12-year-olds
So
would come up to
nuts.
me during the Gossip Girl years, and I'd just be like, "What?"
But I was just like, and I was watching like Ally McBeal. Like it was just like,
the Dancing Baby.
yes, the dancing
I remember
baby.
those
yes.
commercials at 12.
Yes,
just
they
being
were
like,
huge.
Ooga chaka,
Yeah.
ooga chaka. I can't stop, and the baby's just. Man, take me back.
But yeah, and so I think I had like a small like crew of friends. I think more boys than girls. But yeah, I like didn't give a shit about school. Like which used to drive my parents so crazy. I never really applied myself. Like I did enough just to get like passing grades and like whatever. But yeah, I just was like hang out at the playground, go home. I like to spend a lot of time with myself, which I think is a common trait among a lot of stand-up comics. Which is not to mean that like I didn't like go out and like hang out with people, but like I could be alone for a while and be like, oh, this is fun. Like I'm a good hang.
Yeah.
I like that too, but I didn't
Yeah.
didn't go into stand up.
Yeah.
There's always time.
No,
When did you realize you were funny?
Oh God. I think I always knew I was funny. I was not a class clown because I had self-respect.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't desperate for it. All right. But I would just always be the person in class making like little side comments that were funny or like, you know, I think I was like voted funniest in high school or something. Like I just was always just making people laugh, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't register that as anything because I was so like, oh, I'm not the hot girl. So I was so obsessed with the fact that I was not the hot girl. And I was very depressed about that. So I didn't even realize I was like that funny. I was just like, whatever. I'm like all these cute boys in school and none of them like me. And then when I graduated high school, I went to Pratt and I was like, I'm going to write serious movies. Like, I was like, I am going to write the next American Beauty, like that trash bag floating
I
in
was
the
like,
wind.
you're looking for your paper bag.
Yeah, I'm like, that is me. And so I literally just took a stand-up class at Caroline's, RIP, when I was 23 going on 24 because a girlfriend didn't want to take it by herself. But I never really cared much about stand-up. I was like, that's not a real job. Like I truly like didn't give a shit, and that like changed my whole entire life. And that's when I was like, oh, I think being funny is like my purpose, which is crazy.
Yeah.
How so cute as things can be, but yeah,
we like to use embarrassing stories or like stories of heartbreak, you know, like first loves, that kind of vibe. Because you're so uniquely awkward then. You specifically.
Yeah. I was
Yeah,
like,
you.
How do you know that about people?
You specifically. The proverbial
like,
we.
we drag me, drag me, Ben.
Yeah, I
Right
mean,
into the glass cage.
you know, yeah, like do you don't have to have one, but
I do. So I was kind of a late bloomer in terms of dating and boys. And so I'll talk about one of the first guys I dated when I started doing stand-up. So this was 2008. And I won't say his name. Dave. No, your husband
his
name. No,
you're just coming up with that. It's
I'm trying-
okay.
Mark.
We know Dave.
Mark.
Dave doesn't do laundry.
How about
Yeah.
Brian, just so we throw him off?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Brian. There we go, Brian. His name is so far from Brian. But we met outside, I think, Comic Strip Life. So there's a comedy club, like in the 70s, and like when you start out doing stand up, you're just desperate for stage time. And it's so funny. Like when I started doing stand up, my parents were like, "Oh, you're doing like sold out shows all over the city, right?" And I'm like, "No, I'm doing stand up in front of like 15 foreigners who don't speak English. Like this is what we're doing. This is my college degree." And so I met him online, like waiting to like audition to get stage time at this club. And then we just like sort of hit it off. He was like really funny. He's like kind of dorky and I'm kind of dorky. So I was like, oh, this is so cute. And then, you know, things were good. We like started like a little like, I used to run this shitty bar show at Manchester Pub, which I think is no longer, but it's in Midtown, on Monday nights during Monday Night Football. And so I bought like a shitty microphone and amp from PC Richards and Son. And we would stand in a corner booth and like yell jokes. And if someone turned around, we knew it was a good joke.
Oh, you mean literally during Monday Night Football? Like it was happening in front of you.
Yeah,
it was
and
formal,
you were
or you just did
competing
it?
with
We did it. We did it in like a corner booth, and people would be sitting at the bar, literally watching the game.
Wow.
It was, but it makes you like strong because
Yeah.
like you're like,
Yeah.
oh, if no one's
Yeah.
paying attention, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So, you know, there were a couple of like red flags about this guy. One, couple red flags. But you know, when you're like, you know, 24 and desperate for love, you're like, I just want a romance. So one time when we were fooling around, getting randy, Penn, close your ears. But he was going down on me, and he
Cupping.
Yes.
The mic.
Is this how?
this is how it happens, Ben. Did you not know?
Okay.
You cup the
I'm trying
vagina.
to close my ears, but I have fucking headphones on.
Pen, just so you know, you have to cup the vagina and then
Okay.
get in there. No. So he was going down on me, and then he goes, "You're too wet down there."
No.
Yes. And I'm not the only one. I've had other girlfriends who have had guys say this to them, which I'm always just sort of.
Already the most vulnerable
they weren't saying,
position.
that guy always says the same thing to me. He always is saying the same. Brian.
He's just
Brian
going
gets
around.
around. He gets around. But other girlfriends have had other guys say that to them. I'm always like, that just means compliments from the chef, you dumb fuck. Like, that's a good thing. So of course, I was like, we're gonna keep dating. So he would just do like sort of weird things like that, and then. One night we were like having like our date night, and so he takes me. It was some restaurant in Union Square that I don't think exists anymore. So we go out to dinner.
Zen Palette.
No, I don't remember the name of it. But we were hanging out, and we had a lovely dinner, and then we had dessert. We had flan, and he dumped me over flan, and was just like, "Yeah, this isn't gonna work." Blah blah blah, like whatever. It's not me, it's you. Da 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 da. And like,
Not me, it's you.
it's not you, it's me. Yeah.
But what he meant was.
That is what he meant.
Was
Yeah.
the flan was too wet.
Yeah.
He was like, this flan is. This flan is a microcosm of the macro.
This is Penn's stand-up audition. How's it doing?
Penn, I'm telling you, when you're sick of you, move on to stand up. You got the chops. But that was like such a bummer heartbreak because it was just like we were starting shows together and doing show. You're feeling like, oh, we're like a baby comedy couple together, and then this guy just thinks you're like not great.
Yeah.
And
Who
yeah.
are there any comedy couples? Megan and Nick Offerman. They're like the only ones
They're
I can think of.
cute.
Yeah. I feel like comedy couples
What
don't
about,
work out.
Yeah.
What about, she's so famous. She's in Bridesmaids.
Kristen Wiig.
No.
Maya Rudolph.
Is it comedy?
Oh,
I don't even know
Melissa
what comedy-
McCarthy.
Melissa McCarthy.
Oh, right.
What about her and her
Yes.
husband?
Oh yeah,
Ben
that's true.
Falcone. Yeah, they've been.
But I
through-
think of him as more of a writer than a comedian.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
guess he's a comedy writer.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
That's a good one.
That's a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Great, we thought of 5.
Not even.
we thought of 2.
2. Yeah.
2? Oh, great. I also can't do math.
He can't math.
But yeah, that was a sad one.
You start a chapter of your own book talking about when you were 14. You say, since I was 14, my brain has been consumed with all the ways my body is not good enough, meaning not attractive to straight dudes and or failing to meet fashion industry standards. Even now, at 34, and with a deeper understanding of how we've been conditioned to have unhealthy relationships with our bodies, I still remember what I weighed 8 years ago as if that's important information. If you were to throw out a year at me, I could, without fail, tell you what size I wore. Ugh.
I know.
As
It's a bummer.
I'm gonna keep going.
Oh.
Every day. No, because this next part is really what I wanted. This is where you make so many compound references. Every day I struggle not only with rewiring my brain to not equate self-worth with how my body looks, but also with not letting men and clothing companies define my own gaze. But because the old noggin has been busy accruing its 10,000 hours and then some and mentally Hadoukening me via negging about my physical appearance, there's so much knowledge I don't possess. And in its place, a big chunk is dedicated to straight male societal approval. But more on that later. First, I have to address the lack of information in my brain. First of all, it doesn't seem like there's any lack. The fact that you knew how to spell Hadouken. I was at first I was like, what is this? Is she spelling Hadouken?
Of course, you gotta. I'm a dork.
But so, this is such a, and by the way, I want to say that, like, I think that level of insecurity is basically universal, but then, of course, it manifests in different ways in us. So not to say, like, oh, what was that like? How are you so insecure? But, like, when did you notice that shift? I can remember for myself when I was about 15, like a certain moment where suddenly everything shifted and I was like, the weight of gaze, I guess, or the weight of the way other people looked at me, the weight of suddenly like, oh, everything is different now. It really was kind of like, I can remember that. So it sounds like if you're saying since you were 14, I'm curious if you can reflect on maybe what causes that shift. What for you was that?
I think it was a lot of things. Like growing up, I desperately wanted to look like Tyra Banks. I was like, to me, I was like, she is just the most beautiful black woman I've ever seen. And I want to look like that in a swimsuit. And I'm not ever going to. I'm an A cup. I'm not going to have titties like that. But I remember there's this girl, I'm going to say her name, Emily Frazier, in my grade. And I had my 3 like closest dude friends, Will, Brian, and Anderson. And Emily just had like the perfect set of boobs. Just like, it was just like, like if you're casting someone in like a teen, like raunchy rom-com, like she would be the dream girl, just flawless skin, beautiful like brown, long hair. And they would just always just say like how pretty she was. And I was just like, I am so far from that. You know what I mean? So you just sort of know, you like notice sort of like the markers for like conventionally attractive people, and you go, I'm either in that or I'm not. And usually people will let you know very quickly if you are or not. So I think that was always just sort of a thing. Like I was just so stick thin. I had like no curves. And so it was just really like, literally, I look like this Sharpie. I kid you not.
Literally.
I look like with Sharpie and I have fucking like civil rights bangs. Like, like truly. It was a horrific physical experience, high school. But yeah, you just notice like the pretty girls getting asked out for prom like right away. And like, you just like find like one of your guy friends who like you'll go with, but it's not romantic or anything. So it's just all those like little tiny like cuts where you just go like, oh. And I think that happens for everyone. And so you sort of figure out what is the way that I can get attention or like get approval or like how people like me. So I think I always just sort of was like, oh, just have like the fun personality. And like that'll be like my way of like sticking out or like whatever. Cause I knew that in the looks department, like I couldn't compete with like the Emily Fraziers of my grade. Yeah.
What was it like growing up in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio? Like, did you feel like you had other Black people who you felt like you could be in community with, who you felt camaraderie with, or were you mostly surrounded by white people?
Yeah, so I went to Gilmore Academy, which is like a predominantly white school. So
I looked it up. It looks like is it Montessori school?
yeah, so it goes all the way up.
Yeah.
And it's a really great school, great
Looks like it, yeah.
education. I didn't imply myself again. Sorry, mom and dad. I've made up for it now. But yeah, I was like, was I the only Black girl in my grade? I think I was. By the time I graduated, I think I was the only Black girl in my grade. So it was just sort of like, you kind of feel like a fish out of water, but probably in ways that you can't always really articulate or process, and then I went to Pratt, which is, a little bit, it's obviously much more diverse than my high school experience. But yeah, you just sort of, when I was in high school, I graduated 2002, so 98 to 2002. And so it was just like, it was a good time for representation in terms of TV. So it's like I could see like Moesha and like all these shows and Martin. So I feel like, oh, this is like, I remember like watching Living Single and I was like, oh my God, Queen Latifah's like in New York and she has like her own magazine. I'm like, oh, I can like live in New York one day. So I was able to like have like those like dreams and aspirations. But I do look back on it now and I'm like, as much as I liked Gilmore, I do wonder how I would be different if I went to a more diverse school. And also think about that with HBCUs. Like if I did that instead of an art school, I'm like, what would be different? But then I'm like, there's so much that's like deliciously wonderful about my life that I think it was just for me to be here with you guys. It all had to happen this way. So I try to be like very like at peace with stuff, but it definitely did feel like I was never going to be like someone's ideal or someone's type. I think it's like how I felt. Yeah. Is that sad? Am I breaking the room down?
No.
Should I do another ad for Celsius?
Yeah, please do.
Well, I do. No, I totally relate to all of that. And I, like, 6 years ago, there was someone that I was, like, really interested in, like, really went for it. He did not reciprocate, but I remember my friend Molly, we were driving somewhere and I was like sort of recapping something and she was like, can I tell you something? She's like, you're clearly not his dream girl. Like, and she's like, I can tell you who his dream girl is. It's really obvious, like what that is, but you're someone's dream girl. So like focus your attention on that. And it was like, no one had ever said it quite like that, but it's true. Like you're many people's dream girl.
Well,
you have to find one that you like too. For sure. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's painful feeling to be like, oh, like this isn't what people are looking. I'm not what someone's looking for.
Yeah, and you're just sort of like, well, I don't understand why, because you're like, you're like, I don't feel ugly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's sort of like you're in this no man's land where it's like you're not going to be the most desirable or like whatever. And so you're just kind of like, fuck, well, what do I do? So I just became funny.
Well, you're also very funny and successful, which some people don't like. It was an interesting.
Well, also, I mean, a moment ago, I feel like what you were talking about was, I mean, the manifestation of that kind of superficial judgment is also, it finds its like most ugly and unique embodiment in racism, And so, I mean, it's like, that's, well, and today we talk about race.
But you're right. Like for those white boys, I was never gonna be like the dream girl. You know what I mean? So it's just sort of like that was never gonna happen for me.
You could have been, but also the messages that they're getting from media, they also like what is their dream girl?
Yeah.
Who's building their dream girl?
Yeah.
The way you told it, it feels like it has wisdom, and then the more you try to plumb that whole dream girl thing, I feel like it.
Well, no, but my friend Molly, I mean, she was even describing like a personality type that wasn't
right.
I think what she was telling me is like, you're too straightforward
Just
for this
an
guy.
essence.
Yeah, he wants like easy, like a go
a
along.
really soft, like
yeah.
He just wants something different. That's not
just
you.
gonna laugh at all his jokes, but never make a joke.
He wants a type B.
He doesn't want someone to call him out on stuff.
Type B.
That's the name of your special pen. Type B.
Type B.
Yes.
Wow, that's actually.
Oh my God,
wonder-
that should be the name of your production company.
Well, there's Plan B, so it's probably a little bit too close.
Oh
Maybe.
yeah.
Too close.
No.
I'm always second to Brad Pitt. I have this problem.
Yeah, he was almost cast in Fight Club. And
I was just 10, so it was.
Brad gets it again.
Chubby.
Yeah.
None of it made sense.
In the research, it's like a prominent theme that comes up that you have this strict rule about people sitting on your bed. Can you tell this rule and then I'll ask my question?
Oh, God. The world is fucking disgusting, people. It is filthy. New York is revolting.
Especially,
And I love New York. And I remember when I was on Jimmy Fallon, mean to brag, but I was on Jimmy.
What was it like when I was on Jimmy Fallon?
Mean to brag.
I'm curious about which way it was like, because the times I've been on Jimmy Fallon, it has felt one kind of way.
More than once.
I went for the first time in 2000. Well, now this is like real. I'm trying to think of when it was. 2008.
I'm bored.
Okay.
I was trying to get this aside.
That joke went on too long. See, this is why I'm not a stand-up. This is why I'm not.
You gotta try it out. No, but I remember I was on Fallon. I was making jokes about how New York is dirty, and like some people on Twitter got so mad. They were like,
really?
"How dare you talk about New York this way?" And I'm like, "Cause it's fucking disgusting."
Yeah.
What are we
Were
talking
those people
about?
not from New York?
And they live in New York, and they're like, "It's amazing." I'm like, "It's an amazing city, but
Yeah.
it is
Amazing, dirty,
It's
dirty.
so
lick,
dirty."
lick your shoe right
Yeah.
now, sir.
I made a dumb joke about being on Fallon. Sitting on, yeah. So
Yeah.
my parents were very strict about like cleanliness. Like they like really kept a clean house. And like whenever my brother and I came home, they were like, "You smell like outside, like change your clothes."
Smell like outside.
Yeah. Change your clothes, get it together. So that lesson sort of stuck with me. And I remember when I was in college, in my dorm room, I got my room essentials bedding from Target. I felt very fancy. And like, I didn't want people like sitting on my bed. So I'd be like, you could sit like you could have like one ass cheek like on the corner, but the other ass cheek has to like dangle off.
Did people respect it?
People respected. There was one person who was so fucking wild, and this was a guy that I liked, and we had the same taste in movies. Honestly, being a college age person is just such a waste of. You're just you're such a fucking idiot. But so you're like just really potential. Like you like bullshit. But he came over and he sat on my pillow. And I didn't say anything because I was like, I like him so much, but this movie's 3 hours. And I was like, truly trying to like have fun, but my type A was like,
She like burned the pillowcase.
yeah,
when you
I mean,
left.
I did. I was like, this room essentials has gotta go. But that is a thing where I've had friends from college who will be like, oh yeah, I remember like your no outside clothes in the bed rule. And I'm like, is that the coolest thing you remember about me from college? Is that I didn't want dirty Levi's on my bed?
Okay, so you
Yeah.
have said there's a small, very small group of people who would be allowed to sit on your bed with outside clothes, like Stephen Colbert, Michael B.
could.
Jordan,
Yeah.
Penn Badgley, yay or nay?
I'm gonna say Penn, of course. We've been through
can
so
add-
much today. You're on the list. Yeah.
That's an exclusive list to be on. That's
Nice.
great.
What about dogs?
I am not an animal person. I don't
Okay.
mind them, but I feel like it's such a responsibility. And also,
yeah.
do you have dogs?
I do, but I'm
He
with
doesn't
you on
like
the
them.
responsibility.
But I feel like he's in
so
your camp.
much.
It is well.
It's
no,
a lot.
I actually love them enough to be like, you know what? This is a lot of work, and I think we'd both be happier if we just. It's not you.
Yeah, that's
it's
the way
me.
that's the way that everything loves to be
It's-
loved. In that way that it's like I could do without you.
I think we'd both be better off. You in the wild, eventually dead, and me living
At
my long
home,
life
yeah.
without having to come home to walk you.
Yeah.
And you're upset.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. Every time they go inside, we're both upset. You know? And
Looking
we're
like a
past
true
that
dog
phase,
lover.
but like everybody goes through that phase, and you have to think every time they go inside, we both lose. So
So that's twice a day I'm losing. Let's talk about your illustrious career.
Oh
I mean, I
my
feel like
gosh.
we've already touched on
first
it. but-
career question I have for you: Have
Okay.
you met Viola Davis yet?
I haven't.
You haven't?
We have not
Not yet.
been in the same circles for some reason. We've never met.
I have to say, I thought maybe.
No.
Can
we get Beth in here?
Yeah, I was like,
She's
can we
gotta make it
bring
happen.
Viola?
Yeah. My publicist, Beth, where's Viola? She's supposed to surprise me for this podcast. That's the.
That was, that was where she comes in. This is we're a number 1 or number 2 podcast here.
But I've been managed to meet a lot of like wonderful people along the way. Like I got to moderate on Michelle Obama's book tour, which was like so unreal. It was like the coolest thing.
Wow.
I did it 5 times.
What was that like?
It was, well, first of all, it's so wild because it feels like her book was a fever dream because she was selling out arenas to talk about a book, which
that
never
doesn't happen.
happened.
Yeah.
That never happens.
Wow.
So you're already like, this is a once in a like lifetime thing that's not going to come along. And like everyone there was like so excited to like hear from her, and she's so smart and funny. She always just has like stories like ready to go.
I feel like she tracks far better than her husband at this point.
Yeah, like
Far is maybe an extreme thing to say.
people
but she
love
like
her.
you just
What's not to love?
yeah. So the first night, I remember I got like this really cute outfit, and by the end of the night when I had to stand up and we were like doing like our bow to the stage, like my shoes were full of sweat because I just was so nervous about like I interview people a lot, but I'm like interviewing
that's
someone in front of 20,000 people, like you don't want to fuck it up.
Yeah, and it's her.
Yeah, you don't be like the person who sucks at interviewing Michelle Obama. So I was really nervous the first time. But then after that, it was just sort of like, she's so easy to talk to. You just send the questions ahead of time. Like, this is sort of like the theme for the night. And like, she was game and down, and it was so cool.
What was the
great.
most unexpected thing about her for you?
I think the most unexpected thing is just sort of like, she is, and I know it sounds lame, but it's like she is kind of still down to earth, which you're not always sure someone when they're that famous.
Yeah.
I have to say, that was what I was thinking. Like, she's a rare sort of icon. However, whoever it is that ever gets there, however it happens, it's rare.
Yeah.
And I mean, to have any kind of space in your life to be a human,
Yeah.
how on earth? How on earth?
Yeah.
There's not a space she goes into.
Yeah.
Not a single space she goes into where she doesn't completely like change the makeup of the room. You know?
so
That's
true.
exhausting.
It's
Yeah.
exhausting. And I think, like she never wanted to be famous. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
even myself, like deep down, like I was a writer, but I probably like wanted to be a performer, but was like too afraid to admit it to myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there was always some sort of like, I want a little bit of attention on me, but like she never really wanted that. Like she didn't want him to go into politics initially. So I think I think her fame is probably different because it's like, this is cool, this is nice, I'm going to use it for good because I'm not like desperate to be I'm not a Kardashian. I'm not a Kardashian. I'm not like trying to constantly be like front of everyone's minds.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's cool.
That's
I like her.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing you had that experience.
Yeah.
Speaking of like setting boundaries and having to like have your life kind of exposed, as a comedian, I think you do have to, you have to plumb your own life for stories, and you have to be kind of vulnerable, maybe self-deprecating, depending on what type of comedy you're going for. What's that like for you? Is there anything that you try to keep sacred? Is there a space where you can go to kind of shut off?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been doing comedy for 15 years now. So I think there's just like a level of confidence that I have just in myself as a person, not even as like a performer. And then I think I definitely do want to keep more things to myself. Like I like being vulnerable and sharing stories and blah, blah, blah. But like with my last relationship, we were like so much online, and like it was really fun to like do like IG lives and all this stuff together. But then like, I broke up with him and I was like, this is so embarrassing. Because you like read all this stuff and you're like, oh, he's my soulmate. And then you're like,
Never say soulmate.
I know I fucked up, Penn. I fucked up.
Now you know. Now you know.
I
It's
know.
true.
Yeah.
It's true.
But then, so going forward, I think like whoever I date, that would be like on the low, and I probably won't post about them.
No,
Yeah.
that totally makes sense.
Yeah. So Michael B. Jordan, it's totally fine to date me. I won't tell anyone.
Can I read you something that you've said?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh God. What is this?
I know people.
This is
This
what
can
you
be
said.
a dreaded moment, but there's a question here.
Okay.
Okay, so you said, I think we're taught to place too much emphasis on the outside no rather than on ourselves. If someone says no to you, you don't have to say no to yourself. You can say yes to yourself. You can say, I'm going to go off and do my own thing, because people always catch up. It may take a while, but people always catch up. I think that's so great for especially our younger listeners to hear. When did you develop this mindset? And do you have an example of a no that became where someone actually caught up?
Oh my God, that's the amount of rejection. I'm sure you're not in the same boat as me, but like people think they see you on like your shows and you get the podcast and like, oh, Penn's just thriving. It's just yes, yes, yes. And you're like, no, there's some fucking no's in here too.
Oh, lots of no's.
So many, you know what I mean?
We have a company together. It's like lots of no's. It's so much rejection.
It's so much.
It is.
We can't get Viola Davis on here.
That's right.
But there's so much that goes into it. And so I always tell people here's one, I think what I say about myself is like, there are some people who like, for whatever, like everything has just come together where people just get them and they can just get all the things that they, like I'm never going to be a person where like people are desperate to work with me. But, I can like create my own stuff. And, when Jessica and I started Two Dope Queens, like, first of all, I was just still a struggling comic. I think I was like maybe 7 years into stand-up, maybe 8 when we started the podcast. And we really just started because we're like, well, a lot of like, women, people of color, people from the queer community like aren't getting on these late night shows. So we'll just like do our own thing. And we never expected to take off the way that it did. Like we were just truly doing it because it was fun. And then I was like, I think this could live on HBO. And so we were able to get it to that place. And it was so cool to create something that was proven, because I've definitely had, I won't say the festival, but there's a comedy festival that's important. So you can kind of figure out which one I'm talking about.
That's the one name you're not going to say?
Yeah.
Come on.
Let's call it the Bryan Festival.
Yeah, the Bryan Festival. I've been trying for years to like get on this showcase because it's just supposed to like open up your career. And they told my manager at the time that they don't think I have what it takes to make it in comedy. Oh. And when I heard that, I was like, you're so fucking dumb. Like, I was just like, you are so dumb. Like, you don't know who's going to make it, who's not going to make it. And I always feel like whenever I get those rejections, it's always like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, where he's just like, okay. And then just use that as fuel to like just prove people wrong. Yeah. And so I think every step of the way, like with my first book, only one publisher wanted it because everyone else was like, this won't sell. It's a Black author. It's not really relatable. Like just all this shit. And we sold it in 2015. 2015. People were like, this book won't sell because it's written by a Black woman. And then...
That was your first one?
My first one.
And that's Everything's Trash? Or?
Oh, no, You Can't Touch My Hair.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. And then it came out, was on the bestsellers list, New York Times bestsellers list for 2 weeks. And then my lit agent, Robert, had some people who had rejected my proposal. They're like, why didn't you send us this book? No. We would have loved to have published this book. That. And he goes, I did. No, and this is what you said.
Yeah, wow.
And so it was just such cool vindication where I'm just like, the gatekeepers don't really know what they're talking about.
No, they don't, because they're not the ones who are doing it.
Can you cup the microphone and say that again?
The gatekeepers don't really know what they're talking about. But they don't. And so they act like they're, they could see it all because they got to justify their jobs. But I'm just always like, if you just sort of give yourself the permission to just keep creating, like some stuff is going to happen. You're going to break through. And like, you just take the no's in stride and see what you can learn from them. And then just keep doing it. It's hard, but...
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have your own imprint now?
I do.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's called Tiny Reparations Books. We have 6 books coming out this year.
Wow.
7 in 2024, and then 5 already slated for 2025.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and we publish like poetry collections, essay collections. We have a memoir from Reggie Watts that is coming out this year, which is so cool and sort of full circle for me because like when I started doing stand-up, he lived in New York and I would like go to his shows and be like, one day I get to like meet him. Like I was just so like such a baby comic. And novels and like it's really I just love it. I get to like read books and then be like, I want to publish this.
Yeah,
it's so crazy. I get to publish things. So yeah, I really love it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's such a fun job. Yeah. I don't sleep, you guys. Have you noticed?
I know you do so
Yeah.
much.
A lot. Yeah.
It's a lot. But I love it. Yeah.
In a way, it's good people are saying no to something. 'Cause
Yeah.
Can you imagine what would happen if you did meet Viola Davis? Suddenly all the doors would open.
I think it could be so fun. I would just win so many Oscars right away. You know, just be
Without
like,
acting in anything.
yes.
This retro
Best red
active.
carpet reunion.
Yes.
The nominees are. We'll manifest it for you. Where
Yes,
the mind
please.
goes, the energy flows.
I love it. And it's on the index. Is
so
the
where
first
the mind
line.
goes, the
Energy
energy
glow.
flows.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
that's
do.
cute.
Wow.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna go get.
Oh,
Together.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to get you two tattooed.
You too.
Like lyrics.
I love how much you love you too.
Yeah, it's funny
Love them
too to
so
me
much.
because like they're a band where like never had any interest in them until like 3 months ago, right before I started doing press for this past season of my show. I spent like 3 days on a little road trip and decided to listen to the Joshua Tree. At least those opening tracks are like, they're so, in a way, like simple and positive and yearning. you know?
Yes. I love the band so. I've seen them 19 times.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm committed. I like
Is that a
I've-
real number?
Yes, I have it in my phone. I write down.
Have
Oh,
you
wow.
met Bono?
Yeah. Oh, honey, have I met him? Honey.
I love this.
Hold on. Let me turn off my Do Not Disturb real quick just so you can see my home screen. This is Bono and I.
Wow.
That's your home screen.
That's my
an
home
amazing
screen.
picture. That is an amazing picture.
But we met.
Could you hold that up to the? Is that okay?
Oh, wait, hold on. It went dark.
Just for those who are watching. Yeah,
you
that's
guys
a
see
great
that?
picture.
Look
That's
where
incredible.
his hand. Y'all, look where his hands are.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like, okay, I'm gonna jerk off to this later. Okay, guys, who is saying
You
that?
have to.
Who said
You
that?
just make sure you cup.
Who said that? Was that me? But no, we met 2017 at Bonnaroo, and I like shortly before that started doing some stuff with Red, one of his nonprofit organizations, and we just have become friends over the years. And
That's amazing.
yeah, it's really nice. But I just love their music so much. It's just they're really good at capturing emotions and feelings and making you feel optimistic. And introspective. Like I just
Yeah, with like a touch of sadness.
yeah, there's a hint of melancholy.
There's like an
Yeah.
Irish cloud,
Yeah.
but it's still mostly beautiful.
Yeah. So I've really I've been going to Bono's residency quite a bit. It's just
Residency?
great. He's doing a residency at Beacon Theater. It's just like kind of like a solo show.
Wow.
That's based on his memoir, but it sort of like
Oh,
tracks
right,
his
right.
relationship with his father in this really beautiful way. And like he does stripped down versions of the songs,
Wow.
and he's like acting and doing impressions of people. Like it's just like
Wow.
he could literally do everything, and it's very infuriating. I wish I had that, but yeah, they just mean so much to me as a band.
If we were gonna have a Bono song play you out, what would it be?
Well, let's
let's
be
do
clear, we can't afford it. So
Desire.
Desire.
Yeah, I love that song.
Nice.
Yeah.
right. And
So where
here's-
you guys gonna play me out to? Just like
He-
elevator
no,
music?
here's where we can afford more than that.
No, Penn is gonna.
This
he's
is
gonna
this
do
is
it.
where
He's gonna
this
do
is
an
where
impression.
I'm just gonna have to do Where the Streets Have No Name. That's the only one I can think of.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Phoebe.
You don't know with or without.
Something like that.
That was pretty good, Bono.
Wait, what
I
about
think.
with or without you?
Oh.
I feel like that's the classic. With or without.
I think that was the same. Well, we got to say the first two opening tracks, isn't it With or Without You and Where the Streets Have No Name? And those are the two most distinct yet similar sounding arena rock songs that exist,
so
right? They
good.
both do the exact same thing to you, but they're different.
They're so good. And I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Like that, just
Oh,
that
that's
trio
that's-
I
opening.
think that's what, you're right. That's what it is.
Let's
It's
do
those
that one.
three.
That's
It's a perfect trio.
Come on, sing it out, sing it
And
out.
I still haven't found what I'm looking for.
Did we try to harmonize?
I think we tried
That
and
was
we failed.
wild.
And
No,
she's
that
looking
was
at me.
good.
She's looking at me.
You guys,
You got to ask him if we can use that, because otherwise
record contract.
we're cutting the
text
last.
him?
You got to cut the
Could
last
you
30
could you ask
minutes.
him if he wants to come on our show as well?
No, Phoebe, we do have one final question.
Okay.
And you have to give the right answer. No,
Okay.
There's no
If
right
Bono
answer.
said yes, what? No, that's not it. That's not
I
it.
would say yes to whatever he said yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. No, the question is,
Yeah.
if you could go back, all the way back to 12-year-old Phoebe, what would you say or do?
Oh my God. There's a part of me where I don't want to change any of it just because it led me to this. But I think what I would tell young Phoebes is it's all gonna work out okay.
Mm-hmm.
You just sort of have to stick with it, and you're gonna find your path, and it might feel like it's taking longer than it is for other people. But that's just your path. And it's okay. And like time is a construct. Like it truly doesn't matter. Like, you know what I
Time
mean?
is a
Like,
construct.
I started stand up in certain circles late. I started like almost at 24. And, a lot of people start when they're 18. But it's just like, I wouldn't have had shit to say at 18. So it wouldn't have been the right time to start. So I always feel like everything happens at the right time for the right reason. Learn to trust it. Quit having like a death grip on everything. You can't control the world, and have fun. Have some damn fun, which I'm still trying to do.
That was the right answer. So,
There was a wrong one, and you were dangerously close.
So
go.
close.
There were
Yeah.
moments
Yeah.
where you were
You
teetering.
saved it at the end.
Thank you so much, Phoebe.
thank
this
you,
has been
Phoebe.
so nice.
delightful.
This was so fun. I'm so glad I put on this bodysuit from Free People. Just this was great. You guys, I mean, obviously I've listened to the podcast, but just like the chemistry in person is just so delightful because there's so many people now. Like everyone has a podcast now.
We actually got into it too late in the game. Not a good time to start a podcast, we should say.
Nobody
I
else
It is
start
so
any
hard
podcast.
to build a damn podcast now.
I know.
Two Dope Queens was the first podcast I ever listened to,
Really?
and I was obsessed with it. Yeah.
I think it was
so good.
it was the only time I can remember hearing an ad on Radiolab, which is like my
Yeah.
That's
Literal,
the Hail
like-
Mary.
Yeah.
like Radiolab. It's crazy. The first time I remember hearing an ad and being like, I'm gonna check that out.
Oh, and then he didn't. But it's
Yeah.
so
I
nice that he
never-
thought
I never
about
made
it.
it there.
Sounds good.
But I thought about it.
Yeah.
No, but you guys, what you guys are doing is great, and a lot of people have podcasts who shouldn't have podcasts. I won't say who because I don't want to drag anyone. This just feels natural and it feels right.
Aw,
you.
thank
That's
you,
really
It's very
sweet.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't signed the table, feel free. Get you a Sharpie. I feel like you've been here before, no? This one?
I can't read.
Feels like you should have been.
Life is
so many
long.
That's a shocker.
Yes.
You don't do much.
I don't do anything. Pen, listen, I am just always sitting at home. But seriously, do I look cute?
You look great.
You do.
Okay, thank you.
person.
Oh wait, no, I'm right here.
Oh, really? I was like, there's no way Phoebe Robinson hasn't been here.